I want to start with a moment you might recognize. You wake up. Nothing bad happened yesterday. Nothing is falling apart today. Your life, if you were to describe it to someone else, sounds okay, manageable, fine. And yet, before you have even sat up, there is this weight, this dull, inexplicable heaviness that has no name and no obvious cause. You get through the morning on autopilot. You sit down to do the thing you were supposed to do, and something in you just cannot. Not won't, cannot. And the story you tell yourself in that moment is that something is wrong with you, that you are lazy, weak, unable to handle a life that isn't even that hard. I want to tell you today, that story is wrong. What you are describing has a name, and once you understand what is actually happening inside your brain, I think it is going to change the way you see yourself. Let me tell you something about your phone first. You have probably had this happen. You plug it in before you sleep, full battery, not a scratch on it. You wake up 4 hours later, and it is at 30%. You didn't use it. You didn't make a call or send a message. You just left it there. But the background apps were running the whole time, silently, invisibly, checking for updates, refreshing your feeds, processing data you never asked for and will never see. Your brain does exactly this. Right now, as you watch this, there are things running in the background of your mind that you are not consciously thinking about. That conversation from 3 days ago that didn't quite resolve, running. The decision you've been putting off making, running. The email sitting in your inbox that makes you vaguely anxious every time you remember it, running. The low-grade worry about something that may never even happen, running. Neuroscientists have a name for the brain's background processing system. They call it the default mode network. And in a world that never fully stops generating noise, emotional clutter, digital demands, unresolved everything, the default mode network never fully gets to switch off. It just runs and runs and runs until one day, without warning, without a single dramatic event to point to, the battery hits zero. That is what silent burnout is. Not a breakdown, not a crisis, just a quiet, invisible draining from the inside out. Now here's the part that surprised me most when I first came across it. There was a study done with judges in Israel. Researchers spent months reviewing parole hearings, and what they found was almost uncomfortable to read. In the morning, judges were approving parole for around 65% of the prisoners they reviewed. By late afternoon, that number had dropped to nearly zero. Same judges, same prison, same legal standards. The only thing that had changed was that their brains had made hundreds of decisions throughout the day, and by afternoon, there was simply nothing left to make another one with. Psychologists call this decision fatigue, and what it tells us is something most of us never consider. Every decision you make depletes you, not just the big ones. Every single one. What to eat this morning, whether to respond to that message, what that message actually meant, whether the tone of it was off or whether you are imagining things, whether to bring it up or just let it go. None of these feel like decisions. None of them feel significant enough to be draining anything, but your brain processes them all the same. It doesn't distinguish between choosing what to have for breakfast and deciding whether to change jobs. To the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for thinking clearly and making decisions, a decision is a decision. So by the time you sit down to do the thing that actually matters, you have already spent a significant portion of your cognitive budget on things you will never even remember making choices about. This is the hidden architecture of internal friction, and it is exhausting you before your day has even begun. So you come home. You are tired in that way that is hard to explain, tired without having done very much, which only makes you feel worse about yourself. And you do what almost everyone does. You sit down, you pick up your phone, you scroll. And I understand this completely. It feels like rest. It looks like rest. If someone walked in and saw you on the sofa with your phone, they would say, "Oh, you're relaxing." But here is what your brain is actually doing in that moment. Your visual cortex alone, just the part of your brain that processes what you see, is processing up to 10 million bits of information every single second. You are consciously aware of roughly 40 of those. The rest, almost 10 million bits every second, processed below the surface. Invisible. Consuming energy you cannot feel leaving. Every face you scroll past is processed. Every headline assessed. Every emotionally charged image filed somewhere in the brain's vast inbox. You thought you were resting. Your brain was still working, just below the threshold of your awareness. This is the exhaustion without effort, the tiredness that arrives from doing nothing and yet doing everything at the same time. And then, while you're scrolling, something else happens. Something so automatic you probably don't notice it is happening at all. You compare. A psychologist named Leon Festinger spent much of his career studying this. He found that human beings have a deep, almost biological need to evaluate themselves, and that when there is no objective standard available, we look at the people around us and use them instead. For most of human history, that meant your village. 20 people, 50 at most. People whose bad days you witnessed alongside their good ones. People whose struggles were as visible as their successes. Now, it means everyone. Billions of people, all of them showing you their best moments, their most photogenic days, their achievements, their carefully curated evidence that their life is moving forward. And your brain running this ancient comparison software that was built for a village of 50 people takes your ordinary Tuesday, the unwashed dishes and the unanswered emails, and the general sense of standing still, and holds it up against the highlight reel of 300 million people, and finds you lacking. Every time. Not because you are lacking, but because you are comparing your entire unfiltered life, the messy, private version no one ever photographs, to the most polished surface of everyone else's existence. And the chronic low-grade shame that lives underneath that comparison doesn't announce itself as shame. It announces itself as, "I'm tired. I feel flat. Something is vaguely wrong, but I can't tell you what it is." And if all of this goes on long enough, there's a final stage that I want to talk about, because it is the most frightening and the least talked about. The things that used to matter start to feel distant. Not in a dramatic way, not all at once, just a gradual dimming, like the lights in the room being turned down slowly enough that you don't notice until it is quite dark. The project you were genuinely excited about starts to feel hollow. The relationship that meant everything starts to feel like something you are going through the motions of. The future you were building starts to feel like someone else's plan. The psychologist Herbert Freudenberger, who first gave us the word burnout back in 1974, described this as the hollowing out of the self. And what he meant was this: when the brain has been running on empty for long enough, it begins to protect what little it has left by disconnecting from the things that require the most emotional investment. It is not apathy. It is not depression necessarily. It is the brain doing the only thing it knows how to do when it has truly run out of power. It goes quiet. It retreats. It protects itself the only way it can. And that quietness, that hollow, unreachable silence, is what silent burnout feels like from the inside. So what do we actually do about this? I want to give you 3 things. Not 10, not a complete lifestyle overhaul. 3 things, grounded in what the research actually shows works. The first is to close the open loops. There was a psychologist named Bluma Zygarnik who discovered something fascinating in a coffee shop in Vienna. She noticed that the waiters could remember every detail of every order they were currently in the middle of serving. But the moment an order was complete, they forgot it almost immediately. She studied this further and found that the brain allocates significantly more ongoing mental energy to unfinished tasks than to completed ones. It keeps them open, running in the background, consuming resources until they are resolved. But here's the part that changes everything. The brain accepts a plan as a form of closure. You don't have to finish the thing. You just have to decide, I will deal with this on Thursday. Or, I am choosing to let this go. Or, this genuinely does not need my attention right now. That decision alone releases the cognitive resources the open loop was quietly consuming. The second is to treat your attention like the finite resource it is. Every piece of content you consume is a transaction. You are spending something every time you scroll, every time you open a news app out of habit, every time you watch one more video you didn't plan to watch. Start asking one simple question. Is this worth what it costs me? Not as a moral judgment, as a resource question. The way you might ask whether a purchase is worth the money. Because your attention is worth more than your money. The third is to rest through depth, not distraction. This is perhaps the most important one. Distraction doesn't restore you. It occupies you. It gives the conscious mind something to follow while the background processing continues underneath. What actually restores the depleted brain is depth. A walk without your phone where you let your mind wander without directing it. A conversation that actually goes somewhere. A book read without interruption. Something made with your hands. Anything that engages you rather than stimulates you. There is a difference between being filled and being fed. And your brain right now is hungry for the second one. Silent burnout doesn't happen because your life is too hard. It happens because your brain has been quietly doing more than anyone around you can see, more than you can see, and nobody, including you, noticed the battery draining, the background apps running, the 1,000 small decisions depleting you before noon, the scrolling that looked like rest but wasn't, the comparison that felt like nothing and cost everything. You are not lazy. You are not weak. You are not someone who cannot handle their own life. You are someone whose brain has been working in silence for a very long time without rest. And now you know why. The question now is what you do with that. Just answer a little more honestly about what is actually costing you your sanity. A little more protection of the things that restore you. And a little more grace for the version of yourself that has been running on empty and still showed up, because that is not nothing. If this video helped you, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you think this video can help someone else you know, share it with them. This is Psyche and Stillness. I will see you in the next one.